Before a man leads armies, before he speaks to nations, before he changes the course of history, he must first win the quiet war inside his own mind. The battle no one sees, the darkness no one applauds, the agony of becoming more than the world expected, more than even he believed possible. That is where Winston Churchill was forged. Not in the applause of Parliament, but in the loneliness of rejection. Not in the comfort of certainty, but in the abyss of self-doubt. Not in peace, but in the fires of his own failures. He was not born with an unbreakable will. He built it, brick by brutal brick, layer by layer, battle by battle, until his soul became a fortress no storm could breach. This is the Churchill mindset, and it is not reserved for the chosen few. It is a blueprint, a weapon, a philosophy, and it belongs to anyone willing to suffer for greatness. Because make no mistake, willpower is not a gift. It is a decision, made 1,000 times, especially when it's hardest to make. When the world collapses, when the mission seems impossible, when even your own country doesn't believe in you. That's when the real leaders rise. Not with the absence of fear, but with the mastery of it. That was Churchill, a man who stared down tyranny, not because he didn't feel fear, but because he refused to let it drive. A man who woke each day to the weight of nations on his shoulders and still found the strength to speak fire into the hearts of millions. Not because he had more power, but because he had more will. And where does that kind of will come from? It does not come from comfort. It comes from clarity. The unshakable knowing that your life has meaning, that you are not here to be average, that you are not here to blend in, to drift, to please. You are here to shape history, starting with your own. Churchill never confused popularity with purpose. He knew he wasn't always liked. He knew the halls of power had turned their backs on him before, but it never stopped him. Because he wasn't driven by applause, he was driven by mission. He believed that his life had been summoned to meet a moment. And when that moment came, when bombs fell, when cities burned, when Europe trembled, he stepped forward while others stepped back. That's clarity, not a perfect path, but a perfect resolve, a stillness of purpose in a world addicted to noise. And you will need that same fire, because life will test you. You will be dismissed. You will be underestimated. You will be told to play it safe, to sit down, to wait your turn. But if the Churchill mindset lives in you, you will rise anyway. You will keep walking when the map disappears. You will keep building when the bricks crack in your hands. You will keep believing, even when no one else does. Because your clarity won't come from others, it will come from within. Once you've anchored your clarity, you must build upon it the foundation of belief. Not the kind they write in self-help books, not the cheap optimism that collapses under pressure, but belief forged in reality, belief tested by fire, belief that does not shake, even when everything else does. Churchill wasn't delusional. He didn't believe everything would be fine. He didn't pretend evil didn't exist. He saw it, clearly, coldly, and early, and still he believed. That liberty was worth fighting for, that tyranny could be stopped, that even in the darkest hour, there would be light again. His belief was not passive, it was aggressive. It pushed forward, even when every voice told him to stand down. That's the kind of belief that makes a man unbreakable, because when the world doubts you, and it will, you have to be the one voice that says, we go forward anyway. That kind of belief can't be borrowed, it must be built. You build it by keeping promises to yourself, by doing the hard thing when no one is watching, by not quitting again and again until your brain stops expecting you to. Because your belief is not what you say when things are good. It's what you whisper to yourself when everything is collapsing. That's what Churchill understood. You can't control the enemy. You can't predict the chaos. But you can decide, right now, that nothing will break the core of who you are. And that belief, that's what people follow. Not the perfect leader, not the loudest, the one who believes more deeply than anyone else. But belief without discipline is just noise. To truly forge an unbreakable will, you must create systems that train your soul for battle. Churchill's routine was his secret weapon. He wasn't just a speaker. He was a strategist, a planner, a student of history. He read relentlessly. He wrote obsessively. He didn't wing it. He warred with it. And you must do the same. Discipline is not punishment. It's preparation. It's what keeps your will intact when sleep is scarce, when critics get loud, when the mission becomes more than you bargained for. It's the armor for your mind, the anchor for your purpose, the grind that makes greatness inevitable. And make no mistake, there is no greatness without grind. Churchill didn't become legendary by accident. He became legendary by design, by setting boundaries, by mastering time, by preparing his speeches like a general prepares a battlefield. He understood something most never learn. The will is not a mood. The will is a muscle. And if you don't train it, you will collapse when the storm comes. So ask yourself, what rituals are you building? What habits are you sharpening? What weapons are you preparing for the war ahead? Because make no mistake, a war is coming, not with guns, but with pressure, doubt, delay, disappointment, and only those who have trained their will have the strength to answer it with fire. Clarity gave him direction, belief gave him fire, discipline gave him armor. But it was relentless action that made Churchill unstoppable, because leadership is never theory, it's motion. Not in perfect conditions, but in the worst possible moment when everything is screaming, stand still, wait, pause. Churchill didn't wait, he moved, every single day, every single moment. Even when the skies were filled with fire and every headline screamed defeat, he acted when others froze, he spoke when others panicked, he made decisions while bombs were falling. Not because he knew the future, but because he knew the cost of hesitation. You want to build an unbreakable will? Then move. Move when you don't feel ready. Move when they say it's not your time. Move when you're tired, afraid, unsure, or overwhelmed. Because motion in chaos is the sign of a leader. You don't wait for calm waters to row. You row through the storm until your hands bleed. That's what Churchill did. He didn't have time to debate his own doubt. He didn't outsource courage. He built it, step by painful step. Because inaction in crisis is a form of surrender, and surrender was not in his vocabulary. But action alone isn't enough, because the moment you move, resistance shows up. You will be mocked, dismissed, outvoted, laughed at. Churchill was. He warned about Hitler years before the world believed him. They called him paranoid, too extreme, out of touch. But he stood firm. Because when you know the truth, you don't need approval to speak it. And when history caught up to his vision, they came running back, to the very man they once ignored. That's the cost of leadership, to be right too early, to carry vision while others carry comfort. But that's also the gift of an unbreakable will. You don't need the world to catch up. You keep moving forward anyway. You trust your gut, you follow your fire, you build while others sleep. Because the most dangerous leader in the world is the one who keeps going without applause. Churchill didn't lead for likes. He led because he couldn't not. It was in his blood, in his bones, in his every breath. That is the Churchill mindset. Not perfection, but persistence. Not invincibility, but indestructible movement. And you have the same choice right now. Will you keep waiting for permission, or will you create motion without it? Will you silence your voice, or will you let the world hear it, even if it shakes? Will you hide your ideas until they're safe, or unleash them while they're still dangerous? Because the truth is, most people wait until they feel brave. But the greatest leaders act until they become brave. And the more you act, the more you chip away at fear. The more you build the evidence that your will cannot be broken. You act until motion becomes identity. Until you stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start declaring, "I was born for this." As the world shifts beneath your feet, as the tides of public opinion rise and crash like thunder, there is one thing every great leader must master: adaptability. Not flexibility that bends with every breeze. Not compromise that surrenders truth for peace. But the kind of adaptability that says, the path may change, but the mission does not. Churchill understood this better than anyone. When strategies failed, he didn't crumble. When alliances cracked, he found new ones. When defeat loomed over Europe, he adapted his approach, but never his resolve. Because he knew the difference between adjusting the sails and abandoning the ship. This is the paradox of power: to be unshakable in purpose, yet endlessly creative in execution. To be firm at your center, but fluid at your edges. To move without losing yourself. That's not just intelligence, that's wisdom. The kind that only comes through battle. The kind forged in the trenches of real failure, real delay, real consequence. Adaptability is not a pivot of convenience, it is the strategy of survival, because the world doesn't slow down for your plan, and neither should you. So don't cling to comfort. Don't wait for the perfect version of your dream. Start with what you have, where you are, and shape the storm around you. That's what Churchill did, not because he had no fear, but because he refused to stay still. And when you move forward in this way, through shifting sand, through broken plans, through betrayal and delay, you will encounter something rare, something sacred: solitude. Because the higher you rise in conviction, the fewer people will walk beside you. And this is where most men falter. They crave validation, they need agreement, they wait for applause before they act. Churchill waited for none of it. When others distanced themselves, he leaned into the fire. He didn't shrink to fit their comfort. He expanded into his calling, because he understood that greatness is born in isolation. Before the cheers, before the statues, before the headlines, there is silence, a kind of silence that feels like exile, but is really elevation. Because solitude is where you meet yourself, where you hear your voice, not the noise. It's where you discover whether your vision is real or borrowed, whether your will is yours or conditional. The Churchill mindset does not crave the crowd. It creates the crowd by first walking alone. So don't fear being misunderstood. Don't fear being early. Don't fear being alone. Fear only this, that you let your mission die in order to be accepted. Because history doesn't remember those who were liked. It remembers those who were needed. You do not need the world behind you. You only need one thing: a will that does not break when the voices fade, when the spotlight moves, when your hands shake and your heart stumbles. Because if you can stay in that solitude and still say, "I will go forward," then nothing can stop you. That is the rarest strength on earth. That is the Churchill mindset. There comes a moment in every great leader's life when the walls start to close in, when the odds aren't just against you, they're crushing you, when everything you've built feels like it's about to collapse. And the question becomes, can you still lead when your own soul is bleeding? Because leadership is not a game of perfect conditions. It is a test of emotional resilience. Not to pretend the pain isn't real, but to hold the line even when it is. Churchill knew depression. He called it the black dog. It followed him through victory and defeat, through power and exile. And yet, he did not let it devour him. He walked with it. He worked through it. He created anyway, because he understood something most people run from. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the door to truth, to refinement, to depth, to purpose, sharpened in the crucible of fire. Churchill did not curse the burden. He carried it. He used it as a lens to see deeper, to speak bolder, to fight harder. Because pain, when faced directly, does not weaken you. It fortifies you. It carves out the false. It purifies your voice. It forces you to decide right here, right now, who you really are. Will you collapse under it, or will you rise through it? Because your will is not proven when you feel powerful. It is proven when you feel broken and keep walking anyway. This is not romantic. This is not poetic. This is the truth that builds empires, that turns ordinary men into generals, that shapes mothers, builders, teachers, founders, warriors. Resilience is not just endurance, it's transformation. It's the quiet, ruthless decision to rise, to rebuild, to recreate from rubble. Churchill didn't return to leadership because he missed power. He returned because the mission demanded it, because the world was on fire, and he knew he had been forged for this. That is how adversity becomes an assignment. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" you turn wounds into wisdom. You make the pain pay you back. You speak through the storm so others know it can be survived. This is how leaders become immortal. Not by living easy lives, but by bleeding in the right direction. So let the hardship come. Let it shape you. Let it break off the parts of you that were never built to last. Because the storm will not last. But the version of you that survives it will. You must decide now. Will this pain paralyze you, or will it prepare you? Will this setback define you, or will it become your defining edge? Because when the world sees a man who refuses to break, they remember him forever. Churchill didn't just win wars. He won the war within. That's what made him dangerous. That's what made him different. Not because he was fearless, but because he had mastered fear. He stared into the abyss and did not look away. And when the abyss blinked first, he moved forward. Not shaken, not shattered, but sharpened. And now, so can you. Once you've walked through the fire, once you've faced the silence, the doubt, the breaking, something strange begins to happen. You begin to feel something deeper than pride, something quieter than confidence, something sharper than ambition. You begin to feel gratitude, not the kind that's printed on coffee mugs, not the hollow thank you of comfort, but the gratitude of survival. The kind that only comes from living through something that should have taken you down, but didn't. The gratitude of knowing that your scars are not signs of weakness, but proof that you kept going. Winston Churchill never romanticized war. He knew its cost. He walked its ruins. He buried its dead. But he also understood that those who lead through darkness, those who carry others when their legs are broken, become the soul of a generation. And he never forgot that. He thanked the hardship. He saluted the burden, because it gave him the chance to do what few ever do. Leave a mark that lasts. That is the hidden gift of an unbreakable will. It creates a legacy no enemy can erase. Because when you lead with courage, others feel it. When you speak truth into panic, others follow it. When you stand where others break, others rise because of it. And suddenly, you're not just surviving, you're igniting. Your struggle becomes someone else's fuel. Your pain becomes someone else's permission. Your journey becomes a torch in someone else's night. That is the real reward. Not applause, not medals, not comfort, but impact. Impact that outlives you. Impact that reshapes the world. Impact that speaks long after your voice goes silent. But make no mistake, this kind of legacy is not built by accident. It is carved. Carved in early mornings, carved in painful losses, carved in nights when everything says give up and your soul says one more step. Churchill was not celebrated in his beginning. He was laughed at, ostracized, told to stay quiet, but he refused to dim because he knew something the world hadn't yet learned. To each, there comes in their lifetime a moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing. And when that moment came, he was ready. That is what you're building now. You are training not for applause, but for the moment your name is called. Because that moment always comes. Maybe not in front of cameras, maybe not in the spotlight, maybe not on a battlefield, but it comes. A crisis, a decision, a soul who needs your strength. And the question is, will your will be ready? Gratitude doesn't make you soft, it makes you sure. It's what turns your story into power. It's what keeps you humble when the winds arrive and grounded when the pressure returns. It's what turns chaos into clarity and pain into purpose. So be grateful for the struggle, for the silence, for the shaping, because you are being forged into something rare, something needed, something undeniable. You are becoming a leader the world cannot ignore. Not because you shouted loudest, but because you walked deepest, bled honestly, and rose again when no one was watching. This is legacy. This is impact. This is the Churchill mindset. There comes a time when the war is no longer outside of you, it is within you. And in that moment, no army can save you, no mentor can stand in for you, no book, no speech, no rescue is coming. Only you, naked, flawed, mortal, but alive, breathing, still standing. That's where Churchill stood, not as a perfect man, but as a decided one. A man who knew, deep in his marrow, that when destiny called, he would answer. And not with noise, but with conviction. Not with bravado, but with an unbreakable will. That is what greatness truly is. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of unyielding purpose. Not the erasure of fear, but the refusal to let fear decide who you become. And now it's your turn, not to copy Churchill, but to channel what he taught, to rise with his voice burning in your blood, to lead with a fire the world can't put out. You are here to do more than just exist. You are here to conquer the smallness within you, to overthrow the excuses, to dismantle the self-doubt you inherited, to become dangerous with your discipline, unshakable in your belief, and unyielding in your action. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs you, unfiltered, awake, unstoppable. And make no mistake, there will be storms, there will be betrayal, there will be moments where quitting feels like relief. But the Churchill inside you, the part forged in clarity, tempered in failure, fueled by solitude and rebuilt in fire, will not let you break, because now you know what it takes. Now you know that unbreakable isn't a gift, it's a decision, made every hour, every breath, every step. This isn't motivation. This is a mandate, a charge, a code, the Churchill code. And if you carry it, if you breathe it, if you live it, no force on earth will ever stop you again. So go, stand tall in the face of chaos, speak fire into silence, lead when no one else will, and build your name, not for glory, but because the world will one day say, when everything was falling apart, they stood. And because they stood, we survived. That is the power of one man. One will, one mind, unbreakable. Now go become it.